Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Xtreme Memories right here on the Wrestling Shatter YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, throw a comment down too, folks. Xtreme Memories on the 15th and 30th of every single month. We've been doing it all the way since July of 2020. Now, I got a very special guest on. A lot of people in this part of the country know exactly who this is, and then some, because we'll get into that. We'll get into how XPW relates and how XPW has basically, through my guest, not only himself but also created a lot of stars in professional wrestling. Nonetheless, the one and only Robby Phoenix. Welcome to Xtreme Memories, sir.
Hey, what's up, Kris? How are you?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been kind of reconnecting in the past few months here, so this has been cool.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah, man. But we'll get into XPW, starting with the Asylum, the official XPW training school. But now you grew up in LA, in East LA, if I remember correct.
Yes, I did.
And how was that as far as the wrestling scene and going to events? Were there local things? I know you weren't far from the LA Sports Arena and all that as well.
Yeah, like back when I was growing up, when WWF back then would come into town, they would come into the LA Sports Arena. I would be there. Didn't really know too much about the local shows, like the indie shows. I did get to see a lot of Lucha Libre shows locally. And I guess that was my introduction into independent wrestling, when you had small Lucha Libre shows come out. But even then, those were kind of big. You'd see some of the stars that you see in Mexico. So that's where I got my my introduction to independent wrestling, Lucha Libre shows.
So when did you become a fan of pro wrestling, would you say?
Wow. I became a fan when I was very young. As far as I was really young, as maybe about 5 or 6, catching the old WWF shows on Saturday mornings. And then once I got hooked on WWF, and then I realized there was other wrestling promotions out there, like the NWA.
Right.
And then the AWA, and of course, and this was the actual promotion that got me hooked on wrestling first, before WWF. It was the Von Erichs in Texas. Back in if you remember back in the old days, if you're as old as I am, you'd have the channels where you turn the channel. You didn't have a remote control. You turned the channels, these little knobs, and if you get to the bottom knobs, there's some channels on there, and then 56, you would catch Texas wrestling, in the Von Erichs.
Well, that was so in LA. Are you talking about like channel 56 UHF KDOC?
Yes, that is it.
Yeah, I remember like you'd have to be lucky enough to find it, and I remember watching some way back in early mid 80s when I was little, man. And I remember seeing Boogie Woogie Man and the Von Erichs, and I remember telling people that years later, like, how did you watch World Class in LA? And I didn't know how to answer them, and I remember finding out, okay, that was KDOC. But but a lot of people didn't know that, they didn't advertise it much or anything. You just have to be lucky. But yeah,
exactly.
And that was one of those things where you kind of knew what wrestling was, but then you'd watch that like, wait a minute, this one's for real.
Right.
Yeah. It was a different product. It was great too.
Way different.
Yeah. And NWA was different enough, but then that one I felt was even on another level.
Right. Yeah. When you saw NWA, you saw, okay, these guys are wrestlers. Mm-hmm. That's what, that's when you think of wrestling, that's what you saw. You saw NWA, you go, those guys were getting down on the mat, and, they knew all these cool wrestling holds. But when you saw when you saw the Texas wrestling, when you saw the Von Erichs and all that, you thought, man, these dudes are fighting. Man, these guys are just really fighting. It's not even, a cartoon or anything. It's these guys are fighting.
Right. Yeah, no, it's amazing looking back. I mean, it's the same era. It's all in the 80s, but they were so different, the different territories within some. I mean, it's kind of like entertainment or music, let's say. There's rock, there's rap, there's hip hop, there's country, but even within those same genres, the bands and the artists are so different, So
Right, exactly.
But so fast forward, Robbie, getting into the business. I'm gonna guess this was a little bit after the days of world class being on KDOC 56 is when you got in. And when was this that you finally got into the business?
I finally got in around 2000, 2001. I can't remember exactly, but around there. And it was that same thing of I was at work, and one of my good friends that I worked with told me, "Hey man, I heard on the radio there's this new wrestling company, and they're gonna be in the Valley, man. You want to go check it out?" And I was like, "Sure, wrestling, and yeah, I'll go check out a live wrestling show." And so we went, and it was the first XPW show.
Okay. This is the first XPW show?
I believe it was the first or second. I'm not quite sure.
It was Reseda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went. It was pretty cool. It's pretty cool watching these guys, and man, I was hooked. We went to another show after that, and next thing I know, I hear about the wrestling school opening up, the Asylum. I called the number, contacted who I need to contact. I believe I spoke to Kevin Kleinrock, was the president. Talked to him. He told me all I need to do, come down, put my deposit down, blah, 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 and we start. So I was all set to start, and then unfortunately at work I had a forklift accident where I messed up my ankle, and so I wasn't able to start. So rested, healed up. The whole time I was thinking about it, and finally it healed up. Called the number again, talked to Kevin. It was, they were at a different building now, I believe, or I think they were still at the first office. Called Kevin again, talked to him, said, "Hey, I'm ready to train again." He's like, "Good, come on in." Came in, did an orientation, put my deposit down, and started.
And now, how long were you out between the time you signed up, you got the accident, and then you came back? Do you remember?
Oh man, not exactly. It was a few months.
Okay.
It was a few months.
Okay. Did you? Oh yeah, please.
No, it was one of those things where when the doctor cleared me to work, I said, "Well, if you're clearing me to go to work, then I can go to wrestling."
Right. So did you when you chose the Asylum, any particular reason, or because you were already familiar with the product, and maybe was it also because there weren't as many options back then, or?
Well, so before that there was another option. It was geez, I can't remember now. Slammers, there we go. It was Slammers school. Slammers, and I remember going into that office as well, talking to Vern, and going to one of their live shows that they did there at the building, at the studio, or at the office.
Yeah.
And I had talked to Vern and was interested in joining there, and they closed down not too long after that.
Right.
So yeah, I was wondering, man, well, that was my one link to get in. So then when I found out about the Asylum, I was like, oh, so it is my destiny to get in the business.
And that's interesting, because that's, the first time you heard about wrestling on that level and independent, and then, almost fitting that you were to go there. Now, So now your experience, how when you first started, who was your trainer? Because we got to get into this because you basically took the reins because you're one of the premier trainers right now in at least in this part of the country and maybe in the country as far as ranked trainers, but everyone knows who you are in this part of the country. That wasn't the case at then. This is when you were first getting started. So how was your training experience? Did you feel as if like you were the one that kind of caught on? Because like I said, you're doing now what those guys were helping you do at the time, the Damien Steels, the Dynamite Ds, and whoever else.
Right. Yeah. So when I started, yeah, my trainer was Dynamite D, and the thing is learning from Dynamite D. Man, just the way he would explain things. He would, know exactly where to put your hand, and if you put your hand over here, you might not get what you want, this and that. But just the way he would describe it, and I was able to get it. And I think also just from all the years of watching wrestling and kind of imitating things, where I would get my brother and I'd throw a punch at him, or I'd body slam him and they'd drop an elbow on him, or try and drop him. You know what I mean? Just trying the moves on him. So when it came to training and actually doing the stuff, it was just like, oh, I remember when, I try to throw a punch and throw a wrestling punch. Of course, it wasn't as good as you think it is because you don't really know what you're doing. But like I said, the way D would train us and the way he would explain things made me understand a lot more. So then when it came time for me to help people train, it was that same thing of I understood I understood wrestling and everything. And then just explaining it to somebody so that they understand it. Right. And a lot of times, even, when I'm training people now, a lot of times you gotta explain to them in a way that they're going to understand. Not everybody comes from where, I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid. Maybe it's someone who just 2 years caught on to wrestling, and so they don't really know wrestling. It's just, man, I saw this. It was so cool. I want to do it. Okay. Right. So you got to explain something so that they can understand and that they can relate to. And I think that's what was really good about Dynamite D. He can explain something that you can relate to and understand and go,
And you were one of the guys I would assume, and from what I remember and then what I've seen now, that, like you said, you just explained that right there to the point where you understood what he was doing, and then you were able to convey that yourself in your own way, but use that same concept where a lot of trainers, maybe they weren't able to put it into words to help a student understand in words as well as they would, the actual physicality of it.
Right.
So you were training under Dynamite D. You were getting your groove on. You were learning the ropes, literally. And but now XPW was moving forward, and of course, Asylum students were also security, ring crew. What was it like? Because you were seen on TV. There's some monumental moments that you were a part of, and one of which or maybe the two most craziest moments was you were there at XPW Freefall, right? When Grimes came off the scaffold?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, but you were there at Rapture when Supreme got lit on fire.
Yes, I was there.
Yeah. So what were some of the, I mean, that one's got to be up there. It's up there in general, just period. But what were some of like the moments that stuck out to you? And why were you at Freefall, by the way? Were you there at that time or no?
I think I was already gone, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yes, I believe. I think that's why. Or maybe I had to work. I don't remember.
Okay. All right. What a show to miss, though, man.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, when I think about and heard about what happened, I was like, really? Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah. Go down in history, you know,
Yeah.
one of those nights. But what was it like when you were at those shows and you saw the fan base and you were kind of there? Were you kind of like hungry? Did that make you hungrier at the time to finally get in the ring? I know you just started training at that time.
Yeah. So one of the things was, and I think, yeah, I guess because of the student I was they had the most senior students do security and be around ringside. So I had got lucky enough to where all the other students that were there before me had trusted me and kind of knew that I can do that job. So they allowed me to actually be at ringside with them. So here I am, I guess the freshman, and I'm with juniors and seniors over here, and just hanging with them and doing their job. Hey, make sure this doesn't happen, make sure that doesn't happen. And we became known as that's the front security. Every show was us. We were the same guys that were around that ring. And yeah, it made me hungry because I got that front row seat of what's going on in the ring and the crowd's reaction, and it was like, man, I can't wait till I can get that.
Right. Did you so you ended up leaving before the company folded?
Yes.
Okay. Before I get to the question of why that happened, do you remember of there being plans for a debut for you before the company folded or before you left?
No. I haven't heard of anything about me making a debut or anything like that. I know just before we left, we were doing student matches.
Yeah.
And D had, I think, went to Kevin and Rob to ask if we can kind of do a student show.
Oh, right.
And
I remember this. Yeah.
And I believe Rob kind of shot it down, was like, nah, we don't want to be embarrassed if the students, mess up or shit the bed, as we call it. And I remember us getting kind of bummed out about it. Like, man, because we got excited about, hey, we might be able to do a show and wrestle in front of people. And even though it's supposed to, the way D said it, the way we agreed was it would kind of be our families or whatever, so people who knew us, but it was still wrestling in front of somebody. Right. For the whole time that I trained, and when we did student matches, all we had was someone to wrestle in front of was a big poster of Britney Spears. So I get to wrestle in front of Britney Spears every night. So we were kind of, jazzed up and excited that, oh man, there's a possibility that we're going to wrestle in front of a crowd. When it got shut down, I remember everyone that was a part of that was kind of bummed out and was like, man. And I think we just kind of felt like maybe, we just kind of felt maybe we're not going to get a shot here. Maybe we're not going to get called up. And I think that's where everyone kind of decided, I think it's time for us to just go get experience elsewhere.
Okay. And then, so you guys, you and your crew basically. And then where did you go from there? When you're before coming back, but talking about the reunion show, but before we get to that, like what was the between time, your post XPW career, and how did that tie into all the other schools and indies out here at that time?
So D was actually nice enough to hit up some old friends from Slammers that he knew who were up in Northern California, Central California.
Okay.
And so there was a guy named Amigo Diablo and Big Bear Calhoun who were, I think, co-running a company up in a town called Porterville. And so he said, hey, there's this guy, go out there. He said he'll use you guys. So myself and Carnage drove up there, did a show for them. We wrestled each other. And it was fun. We wrestled in front of a crowd. It wasn't a big crowd, but it was a crowd.
Yeah.
In a little shack that we used to call the little shack. You know, but it was fun. You know, we got to wrestle. At the end of it, you know, Amigo was like, "Hey, man, I really like the way you guys work. I want you guys to come back." Okay, cool. So we came back a couple more times, and he had asked if we knew anyone else who would like to come out. So we said, yeah, we had a couple other people. So then we brought up the stepfather and the stepchild. They were working as a team somewhere, and so we called them out and said, "Hey, would you guys want to come down and, you know, wrestle, you know, Carnage and I?" And they were like, "Well, yeah." So we all drove up, ended up there, and we kind of had a feud out there, which was fun. He kind of allowed us to be creative ourselves and on how to get the story over, and it was fun. It was we were all working together, and I say fun, but one thing I didn't like was every night Carnage would book us to get our ass literally whooped by belts at the end of the show, at the end of the match, every time, whether we won or lost. Oh, so it's like, man, it's like every time I go out there, I got to get my ass whooped by a stepfather or stepchild. But it built the drama for us, so that when we had our big match or whatever, you know, we had the fans that were there into it, you know?
Yeah.
And once everyone kind of saw, all the people that were in that promotion that were already there had saw what we did, they all kind of wanted to work with us. So, you know, that's where I got a shot. I believe my first time I got to main event was I got to wrestle their heavyweight champion at the time. Same thing. It was a fun match. I mean, he won, but it was a fun match. And, you know, at the end, he was like, "Man, you're a great, solid worker. Love to work with you again." Cool. You know, all the cool stuff. So it was fun, you know, and we were just able to just have fun and build our matches, you know, and be creative on our own. And, you know, I think that's what helped us, was just allowing us to tell a story. And, you know, the promoter not just, you know, micromanaging, being like, "This is what I want." He just go out there, have fun, man. And so it was up to us to get creative and have fun. And I think that's helped me a lot through my career, where I'm able to tell a story through my matches without having, you know, too much direction. Like even now, even that when there's certain promoters who will be like, "Hey, man, this is what I want." All right, cool. And I'll come back with them and be like, "Hey, what if we did this, this, and this for the story?" Yeah, man, that's cool. I like it. All right, cool. So it just allows me to think, you know, it allowed me to think. And now you know, after years of doing it, it's just comfortable for me.
It seems like such a blessing to have that freedom, especially when you're starting out practicing, because there's so much. I mean, I guess it's always been off and on. I don't want to sound, you know, like, "Oh, back in the day it was better," but there's something to be said for improvising out there on your own, and you yourself needing to make this make sense, as opposed to just reading a script that says what's making sense, you know. And I feel when you and we just worked a show this past weekend, where you came out, you're on the mic, and it's all making sense, you know, in a world of mayhem where there is violence for the sake of violence.
Right. And I think that's the thing. For me, that's the thing. I think as much as the fans do want to see like the cool big moves, or even when you're doing the hardcore of the death matches, even though you're seeing this violence, the audience still wants a story to be told. It's the same thing of why they go to the movies.
Right.
You know, you know it's an action movie, and you know you're going to go see a bunch of action. But what's going to keep you sitting in that seat is the story. Can you follow the story? Is this story interesting enough for me to follow it? Or am I just there and I see, you know, once I see all the car crashes, I'm cool, I'm done. And that's what I like to put my matches. And I want to make sure everything I do tells a story, whether it is wrestling or I got to go out there and cut a promo or talk on the mic. It's, will I tell a story with this so that the audience is interested to stay and watch what's going to happen?
Do you think of yourself as somebody in this business that could, beyond wrestling, could be a writer or a booker or somebody that can kind of help the guys, whether it's actually doing the moves or just putting the pieces of the puzzle together as far as the whole thing making sense, like a Kevin Klein, like you mentioned?
No, yeah, I honestly do believe I'm one of those guys who can be a writer. You know, a few years back, I was an agent in the back for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Right.
I did that for a while. But I guess it just wasn't ready to be the guy in the back yet.
Right.
But I mean, it was fun. It was fun, and even now, anytime I'm booked on a show and I'm in the locker room and I see guys, you know, they're putting stuff together, and it's always funny because I know when they're about to ask me because they stop and they're looking at each other because they're thinking, and they both look to me. I'm like, ah, shit, they're gonna ask me right now. And like, hey Robbie, hey Robbie, yeah, guys, what's up? You know?
Yeah.
But it's fun. You know, it's fun like that where they know that if they're stuck, they can look over and ask me for help, and I'll help them. You know, and I'm one of those guys who I would rather help. You know, I want to help them. I want to help these kids. I want to, you know, want them to learn to do things a little differently. You know, wherever they trained or whatever they know, you know, they can always still come to me, and I'll hopefully help them and make it better for them.
And that in itself, like, to me, that always seemed to help me, like, you know, like when you watch wrestling and you've done it so many times, you can always almost predict where everything is kind of go, you know, and that's the best part, I guess. I mean, it's kind of like the knowing Santa exists, you know.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but that's the art. That's the art of it, you know. It's beautiful. And it only helps you do your job that much better. Like you said, when you're walking to the ring and you got the mic, bam, like this past weekend, everybody was like hanging on your word because it made sense. It's all like the psychology was there, you know, and it fit. And you basically were the puzzle piece that the fans are looking for to put in that slot that fits, you know. So no, I think that's valuable too. And I've seen you do that firsthand. And like you said, you just reminded me about when you did do that with the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. But so you've made your rounds and all that, and fast forward from where we were, but rewind from now, of course, which is wrestling at the reunion shows. What was it to you when because XPW had folded in 2003, but you had left already, kind of did your own thing, got into some different type of training, but then fast forward to 2008 and it's XPW's Cold Day in Hell. XPW coming back. There's no Rob Black, but they're coming back. And at this point in time, it's owned by Big Vision Entertainment. They were the ones that produced the Wrestling Society X and with MTV. Now, you, along with a lot of other alumni from the Asylum and XPW, were involved in the Dynamite D Memorial Battle Royal. So D, of course, yeah, D, we lost him a year before the show, back in 2007. And so this was the tribute show, not just to him, but it was to all the guys, right, that we lost. Yeah. What did that mean to you to get that call? And now, was it something in your mind where it was like, well, this is kind of a bucket list. I've been a part of XPW, but now I'm officially at a show. I could say it there. It's done. You know, was it something like that?
It was exactly it. It was exactly it. I was sitting in the locker room. I remember sitting in the locker room, and, you know, just talking to some of the alumni students, Asylum students that I hadn't seen in a while, just sitting there talking to them and just saying, man, remember we should talk about this. Remember we should talk about, man, wouldn't it be cool if we were on an XPW show? And, you know, when we left and when it folded, we kind of just thought, hey, that's never going to happen. And so here we are sitting in the locker room getting ready to go do our thing. And, yeah, it was like, that's a check off the bucket list. I did it. I'm about to go do it. And yeah, it was fun. Like I said, it was one of those things where yeah, we were going out there obviously for D, but also for the other XPW alum that we have lost. So it's one of those things where, man, and then at the same time, you had, XPW guys who were still around, who were there. I mean, you still had, Supreme, you still had Chaos there, and like all these other guys that that I've talked to back in the day when I was just a rookie, or just even a student, wasn't even a rookie, just a student. Talked to these guys, and all these guys were really cool to me, and talked to me and gave me advice and everything, and I became cool with a lot of these guys. It was funny because I think just before Cold Day in Hell, I wanted, if I remember correctly, I did wrestle Pogo a week before that up north. Or it might have been the second reunion. I don't remember. I get those two mixed up. But okay. He's like, but I remember he was, hey, he's so excited. He was, hey, man, I remember we were doing a thing, and he said he was going to have to kill me with his Pogo line because he's doing the XPW thing, so he has to look strong. And I'm like, fucking hit me with it, brother. He's like, I'm going to fucking kill you, Robbie. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, man. I don't know if that was a Cold Day in Hell, but I think that was I think that could have been it. So you did that. Like you said, Supreme, Necro Butcher. And that was, if there was ever an XPW show to be on it, I know it was a reunion show, but there was a big buzz for that. It was a big crowd. It was produced very well. And now that was a special night. And I'm glad we were able to pull that off.
Exactly.
The whole point, I don't know if we've been talking about this, but that show, it was kind of bittersweet. We were able to have it, but that was a test run. We were going to maybe have monthly or bi-monthly pay-per-views. And that was right when the crash happened. So never materialized, but for all intents and purposes, it looked like it was going to be a thing. There was no indication that it wasn't,
No, yeah, exactly. I remember that. I remember, we did the thing, and everyone was talking as, hey, man, we're planning some cool stuff, and we were like, we're with it. Yeah.
And after that event was over, it felt like, oh yeah, well, this ain't going anywhere. Like, this is something. It was a success. So there was no reason to think otherwise. But but who saw that coming? Just like this pandemic, who saw that one?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, just the timing couldn't have been worse. But we fast forward, and the show was downsized a bit because Big Vision was kind of taking a hit. But we had some resources to do it in a smaller venue, which was the 10-year reunion, XPW X, Roman numeral X, XPW 10. And that was the Stepfather. And I mean, man, so you guys practiced this because it was Stepfather, Redhead Stepchild versus yourself and BC Killer.
Right, yeah. I mean, that was another cool thing to happen was, I don't know how many people know this, but Carnage and myself trained BC Killer, so kind of one of my first students. So it was, kind of a cool thing to do another XPW show, and this time, you're tagging with one of your students, And this was also at the time when we were also still, doing Santino, so I had other students there.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty cool thing.
And man, that show was a success too. A smaller venue, was in Hollywood, but the place was packed, and that was where it halted. And then, man, all these years later, I mean, this show really is primarily talking about the old days, but of course, everyone knows as this show's going, there's rumors that it's coming back again. So who knows? It's all very, we're gonna get people asking, but it's early right now. More to come. Yeah. More to come.
Exactly.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll see, this guy as part of it.
I mean, you got it, man. I mean, you can't be XPW and not have the voice of XPW.
Oh no, I'm talking about you, man. I need to see.
Oh,
you.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it would be fun. It would be fun.
Yeah, it would be. And like I said, it's early, so we'll see. What are the current promotions that you're working with, Robbie? Like,
man,
carrying on that extreme style, or just in general, or both, all of the above?
Man, I'm all over the place, man. Right now, currently, I'm consistently working with a couple of lucha companies. One of them is called Lucha Libre Independiente, and they run locally out here in LA, mostly around East LA, which is cool for me because it's close to home. It's right at home. And then another Lucha Libre company is FMLL. I'm wrestling with those two companies pretty consistent right now. I've been since I want to say June. And then just a bunch of different other American promotions. 3PWA is one of the promotions I work for. A wrestler named Tony Reyes runs it, which is pretty cool. I like that. I like that promotion a lot because he's a veteran in the military, so he runs at the Legion halls. And I really love wrestling in front of veterans because they're so appreciative, man.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I wrestle in front of veterans, they come to me and they're like, "Thank you, man. You were so awesome." I'm like, no, bro, it's thank you. Like you sacrificed everything for me to do this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because of what you sacrificed, I'm able to do this. So no, thank you. And they're just so appreciative, man. And it's like, you can't describe that appreciation that they give you. And I know, the fans have appreciation for us, but when a veteran shows you appreciation, it means a lot more,
Almost to the point where you're like, wait a minute, what are you doing thanking us,
No, exactly. And that's the first thing I tell them when they're like, thank you. I'm like, no, thank you. You don't thank me for anything.
Yeah. No, that's great. So, and if you want to send, pop some links down here, please do. We'll get all your info before we're done off here. But you talked about BC Killer, of course. You trained him. He's gone on to do so much, and he's kind of carrying that legacy of Supreme, of Lester quite a bit, it seems like.
Yes.
Go back to that night, Robby Phoenix, when you were at the Grand Olympic. What was going through your head when you, after Supreme had been lit on fire, been put out, and we all know the story. He went to the burn ward and all that, and he had suffered quite a bit. I remember sitting halfway up the arena where we were doing the announcing, and you could smell the flesh up there. That was one of the most, I would say, top 3 craziest moments in the company history. And you were part of it.
Yes. So a little story behind that was after everything was said and done, and Supreme got his burns and went to the burn ward. I got the blame for that, for letting Supreme burn. That night I was given a fire extinguisher, and I don't remember who else had fire extinguishers, but the spot of that was supposed to be Supreme goes through the table. We have to run in the ring, turn the table off. Supreme wasn't supposed to catch on fire.
Okay. Yeah.
So whoever was responsible for getting the lighter fluid to light the table got the wrong lighter fluid.
Right. We talked to Steve Rosano on this show, and he talked all about that. And everything you're saying right now basically is what he said, and it was basically the fault of the what kind of fluid it was.
So that's so once they lit it and put Supreme through it, obviously it didn't go out the way it was supposed to. So as soon as I saw Supreme go through it, I didn't see Supreme roll out on fire. Yeah. I slid in to turn the table off.
Right.
So as I'm putting the table off, people are calling my name, turn around. So I turn around. That's when I see him on fire. So I started shooting him with a fire extinguisher. So everyone at the end of it was, who the fuck is that fucking idiot? Why the fuck did he go turn off the table instead of Supreme? Well, because I didn't see Supreme on fire. My job, I was told, was to go put out the fire in the ring. So as soon as Supreme went through, I didn't see him roll out on fire. I slid in. I started putting out the table. And I felt bad because everyone was saying, hey, bro, they're kind of pissed at you. And I felt bad because, like I said, Supreme was another guy who was, not, D was my trainer and mentor, but Supreme was kind of my mentor too, because he would come in and run some classes, and I would get to be a part of them.
Yeah.
So he was kind of a mentor too. So when that happened, I felt bad. I'm like, dude, like, it's my fault that he fucking burned? Are you fucking serious? Like, that's, you know, maybe I am an idiot, you know?
Well, it's good. You know, that was just one of those crazy moments. Now, I kind of forgot about your involvement with all that, but when you bring it up, I remember that now. But I'm glad we're getting to talk about it, and I'm glad, and I hope you are too, because I didn't even realize that this would be clearing up any air right here. But the fact that you're telling me this, and Steve Rosano told me what he told me, is one that was never supposed to happen, and everybody had their cues. And the table was supposed to be on fire, and your cue was to boop, go to the table, and you did that. And Rosano and nobody else knew until they saw Supreme on the outside. Oh, wait a minute, because if you look at that footage, everything, it's so easy to see it now replayed, but everything happened so fast that I remember sitting up top, watch him go through the table, watch him run. It wasn't until he was like running all the way around the other side, like, oh, wait a minute, he's on fire. You know, like Supreme's head's thinking differently, but the fans is like, this is just part of the wrestling show.
Right.
And it was part of the wrestling show. So I forgot about that, your involvement, but at the same time, I'm glad I brought it up for you to clear that up, because your job was to put the table out, and you put it out before realizing that, which a lot of us didn't realize until he was all the way around the other side of the ring.
Right, exactly. And, you know, years after, you know, Supreme and I talked about it, and I told him that I am so sorry that I fucked that up. And he even told me, like, dude, you didn't fuck it up. I wasn't supposed to catch on fire.
Yeah.
He goes, and why did my stupid ass run? Like, you ran in with the fire extinguisher. Why did I run away from you?
There was a combination of why that, right. There was a combination of why that was messed up. One, it was the wrong fluid, but two, it was when they lit it. They lit it right before we went into it, so it didn't have time.
Exactly. It was at its highest peak, yeah. You know, and
it was everything happens at once.
Right.
Yeah, and no, he's very lucky that you were there to put him out and all that. So. But crazy moment, and that was just one of many crazy moments in the company history that you were a part of. You were a big part of it. The fans finally saw you at Cold Day in Hell, XPW 10, but before that, you were already a big part of the company behind the scenes. So I'm glad to have you on, Robbie. And but before we leave, and really cool having you on, brother. But
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. In your words, what do you think the legacy of XPW will be in professional wrestling?
Man, it's such a special thing, you know, when you talk about it. Like, here we are, you know, so many years later, and we're still, you know, we have guys like you who are talking about the memories of it, and all the people that were a part of it, everyone that's come through there. And I'm not just talking about you know, the people that were local who became stars, but even stars that came through there. And these guys, you know, were cool. You know, I mean, I have stories, you know, of you know, hanging out in New Jack's hotel room and just chilling, and you know, just laughing up a storm while everyone's getting drunk. You know, you know, hanging out with but just a bunch of different guys, and just it was cool for me because, again, I was this green as shit guy who, you know, was just, man, I'm just sitting here talking with these dudes, and you know, in the middle of partying, of course, they're giving their own advice, and I'm sitting there trying to take as much in as I can. And man, I was lucky. It was one of those things where I felt lucky that XPW provided that for me. Not just did it provide me training and a way into this business, but to get to hang with these named guys who have been around and learn from them, you know, hear from them, talk to them, and not just sit there and be like, I wonder, or, you know, we didn't have the social media back then, but
right.
You know, like, I got to sit there and learn from these guys, like sit there in a hotel room or in someone's house and just talk with these guys. And, you know, they share their knowledge, and that's super awesome. And I think that's why I am the way I am now, where I'll share whatever knowledge I have,
Mm-hmm.
If I can help you in any way, I will. I'm not gonna sit there and say, "Hey, get the fuck away from me! Don't bother me." I see that. You see that. I'll sit in the locker room, and there's never a time when I'm in the locker room that I'm not talking to somebody.
Yeah.
If I'm not talking to an old worker who's a buddy, where we're just laughing and giggling, or if I'm talking with you and we're laughing and giggling, or I'm talking to some of these guys who have a question about a spot in their match, or what would I do to get to this point in the match, or how can they get to this point in the match and tell a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a class act right here, ladies and gentlemen. Robby Phoenix, one of the great trainers, one of the legends now in Southern California and in professional wrestling. Any shout outs, Robbie? I know you dropped some names, and any plugs before we sign off here?
Yeah, I just want to shout out to each and every one that I've ever shared a locker room with, man. Thank you guys. And shared the ring with. Thank each and every one of you guys for allowing me to do this for as long as I've done this, and continue to do it. And I look forward to sharing a locker room and ring with a lot of you guys, you young guys coming up, and a lot of my old friends. And a shout out to some of the companies that I've worked for. This past weekend, I worked for Sage Sin and Kyle Wilde, and DCW with Fern Owens. And up north, man, my friend Mike Rain, Best of the West Wrestling. So many people, and I just thank each and every one of you guys, and I'm glad to be working with and for you guys.
Well, we thank you, Robby Phoenix. Thanks for being on, and you're welcome back anytime, and looking forward to working with you some more too. It's always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us right here at Xtreme Memories. My guest, the one and only right there, Robby Phoenix. He's one of the greats. We'll drop some info down here below. Once again, thank you for joining us. Subscribe to the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel. Like it, share it, comment. Once again, subscribe. Xtreme Memories on the 15th and 30th of every month. We'll see you next time for the Wrestling Chatter. For Robby Phoenix, my name is Kris Kloss. Take care, everybody.
See you soon, my friend.
Thank you for watching Xtreme Memories, hosted by Kris Kloss. He's dropping new episodes every month on the 15th and 30th. You can be the first to tune in by subscribing to the Wrestling Chatter channel right here on YouTube. See you next time.